What's up, everybody? Celtic Scarecrow here, back with another video. Get those 10s and 20 views. It is almost October, and that is one of my favorite months of the year. You have college football going good, games, more rivalries should be popping off. This is the month where you can kind of make or break your actual NFL season. Playoff baseball, and of course, hockey is starting. Also, it's Halloween. It's all the spooky stuff. And because of that, I'm going to challenge myself a video every single day, or as many days I can do in a row. I'm going to try to keep most of them Halloweeny, spooky. Ooh. I like the one I have kind of ready to go is, I have to still film it, is Stephen. I think it's like why Asians don't get haunted by ghosts or something like that.
Smell like failure.
Very funny. But yeah, also on the funnier real world side of thing, I went to my local GameStop and they were like, oh yeah, we have this green screen for sale at half price for $125. I'm like, really? $30 at under $30 at Walmart. Now, $8, $7-8 a felt. That's $24, $2 thumbtacks. Get the lighting right, and I look just as good as some mobile portable $150 thing. But it is Saturday, and we are continue with Mr. Otto Bismarck. I'm going to keep up with this thing, even going to Halloween hour things. Like Mr. Nightmare is one of the people I'm probably going to heavily lean on with his spooky real world stories. I have an experiment with jack-o'-lanterns because my jack-o'-lanterns don't survive long, and I was going to try to figure out how to preserve said jack-o'-lantern. Then I went bored evil brain, and I have a fun experiment I will run on this channel just for the fun of it. That's enough of that shitty chat talk. Throw on the headphones. Let's watch this video. And go. Also, do not forget to do the things.
Bolin, do the thing.
What thing?
The thing! I never had to tell Julie what thing.
I'm not Julie, okay? Pretend I don't know anything about anything that's happening here.
On my channel or his channel. Like this video if you like this video. Share this video. It will help me grow my channel so I can be less of a failure. I've been watching a lot of Stephen He. I will find a clip of failure and put it up right now because that needs to be added into my resume. If you dislike this video, I will hold it against you, but please tell me why in the comment section below, or just tell me what you think of my Penguins jersey and how well they're going to do. And, hopefully it's not another sad ending to the season. But back to being nerdy history. Go!
Bismarck moved from radical to pragmatic. He was at last offered a position in which he would shine. The position of envoy, diplomat, and dealmaker.
Extra history has been entertaining. I'm still like the ourselves. Oversimplified, he does have a new video, and I will be checking it out at some point.
Bismarck.
Also, more death battles. If I find horror-based characters, I will watch them.
Bismarck's tutelage in the diplomatic craft was swift. As he wrote to his wife, I am making rapid progress in the art of using many words to say nothing at all.
Hey! It's like most politicians today.
Wrote this from Frankfurt. He had been assigned as the Prussian...
Like I said, this is probably an actually accurate map back in the day. But it's like... France is roughly probably the same size. Here's Berlin, which means this little chunk is Germany, and there's a bunch of small countries there that don't exist at this time frame, that more or less just exist after World War One and Two.
Envoy to the Diet of the German Confederation, that being the
You said it was Frankfurt? Where the hell is
had been assigned as the Prussian envoy to the Diet of the German Confederation, that being the body that was supposed to figure out how the whole mess of 39 German states were to work together. But working with the Austrians was the furthest thing from Bismarck's mind. He was there to assert that Prussia was Austria's equal, and he did this with aplomb by lighting a cigar. See, smoking in the assembly was a privilege granted only to Austrians, but when the Austrian representative sitting next to him took out a cigar and began to smoke, Bismarck cracked out one of his own and, saying nothing, lit up. The press loved it.
Yeah, smoking wasn't as frowned upon back then as it is now, because, they didn't have the technology to know smoking leads to cancer.
His enemies loved it too. When he returned to Berlin, one of them claimed publicly that the only thing Bismarck actually accomplished in Frankfurt was burning a cigar. And, of course, because old habits die hard, one thing led to another, and the ever-diplomatic Bismarck found himself once again on the field of honor, trading shots with a fellow Prussian over a cigar burnt to snub the Habsburgs. But his time in Frankfurt taught him one thing.
Yeah, honor is a big thing back in those days, and it was a big thing back at one point in the United States, where it's like, I want to say like one of our founding fathers or former presidents literally got into a duel with a member of the press because he pretty much lied about something he did. It's like, you question my honor as a man, therefore we got to settle this via duel.
Prussians were ever to carry the same weight amongst the German states as their much larger rival, they would need allies. So he began to court what he saw as the two most valuable possible confederates for Prussia, Russia and France.
Well, yeah, Prussia and Russia, they're not that far off.
But then, in October of 1857, the King of Prussia suffered a stroke. The king's brother, named Wilhelm, because of course he was, why should a family have to come up with more than one name, took over the leadership. This Wilhelm, though, considered Bismarck as nothing more than a petulant schoolboy. His words. Bismarck had a plan, though. Bismarck always has a plan.
Sounds like he should be a member of the A-team.
He would counter this opinion in a most un-Bismarckian, and therefore most Bismarckian, way. He delivered to the prince a 92-page treatise detailing exactly how Prussia could abide by the letter of the agreement they'd signed that founded the German Confederation, while simultaneously aligning the other German states against Austria.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Unfortunately, Wilhelm thought that was stupid. Bismarck was promptly assigned as the Prussian envoy to the Tsar. Because, I guess if you want to get rid of somebody in 18th century Europe, you just put him in St. Petersburg. Or better yet, Moscow.
Still kind of works in this day and age, too.
And there he would sit on ice until 1862. These were some of the bleakest years of his life. He was cut out of state affairs, he fell ill, he nearly lost the use of his leg, and even withdrew himself from Russian society as his ability to serve as a diplomat was hindered by the fact that everybody knew he was there because his sovereign didn't want him in Prussia. But, at last, a strange letter came, one saying
he was accepted to Hogwarts. Oh my god, that lucky man.
that he should return to Berlin with haste. When he got there, against all odds, he was asked to serve as the head of government. You might reasonably ask, why? Why?
Yeah, they probably read his book and realized, he was right.
Why would the king who had so long snubbed him ask him to run the state?
Because he probably died and the guy took over, realized that he was right.
How could he go from a remote diplomatic posting to the head of domestic affairs? Well, because nobody else wanted the job. At least, nobody else the king thought wouldn't plunge the country into civil war. You see, for a year, the Liberal Party had refused to grant funds for the army.
Wow, that hasn't changed in all this time. The Liberal Party, Democrats, don't want to to help fund the police/military. We learn nothing from history.
And if you know anything about Prussia, you know Voltaire's old adage, where some states have an army, the Prussian army has a state. Meaning that...
Yeah, but Voltaire apparently wrote like a ton of things. I only know that from epic rap battles of history. Eastern philosopher versus Western philosopher. Voltaire was one of them.
Not fun.
Also, he was French, so.
Funding the army had brought them to the brink of constitutional crisis, and the king's closest advisor's best suggestion was to have the army overthrow the Democratic Assembly and then figure it out from there, which was basically 100% guaranteed to start a civil war.
History is repeating ourselves.
So the king figured, call in Bismarck, I guess. If he succeeds, fabulous. If he fails, then we'll just throw him under the anachronistic bus.
They might have had trains back then. You can throw them underneath the train.
As the announcement went out, no one in the wider world of Europe really thought he had a chance. Neither did many in Prussia. For 2 weeks, Bismarck had to scramble to pull together
Pokemon.
a cabinet, because nobody thought his government would last. Simultaneously, he also had to bolster the spirit of the king, who, in his dejection, was continuously on the brink of giving in. And in the midst of all of this, almost as an offhand remark to those who were debating funding the army, he said the words that would define him and define the age. The great questions of the day will be decided not by speeches and majority votes, that was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849, but by iron and blood. But in the midst of all the chaos, Bismarck had a plan. Bismarck always has a plan. If he couldn't get to the Landtag to do what he wanted, well, then he would just have to do what he wanted anyway. You see, the king and the parliament were supposed to agree on any new budget before the government could collect taxes on that budget and do with them whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Everyone...
Oh, I'm an ad.
Numbers move you.
Oh, God, mute. I want to skip you. You are...
Everyone else took this to mean that the government could not collect taxes without Parliament's approval. But Bismarck had other ideas. See, the Constitution didn't really spell out exactly what the government was supposed
Hey, that we the people, that's ours.
to do if the king and the Parliament couldn't agree on a budget. So Bismarck just said, well, we don't have a new budget. Guess we have to keep collecting taxes based on last year's budget. And so sent out the king's tax collectors to do what they did best.
That's actually not bad philosophy.
For nearly half a decade, the government would continue to collect the 1861 budget, and the king would have a stream of revenue without asking Parliament for a thing. With that settled, Otto now had the prestige and the freedom to turn to what he saw as his larger project, positioning Prussia to be the preeminent power in Germany when the German states finally unified. He moved rapidly. First, he checked in when the German states finally unified. He
That Danny Phantom-like reference right there?
moved rapidly. First, he checked in with France to see if they would stay neutral, or perhaps even join Prussia if an armed conflict broke out between them and Austria. Then he wooed the smaller German states to begin voting with Prussia, even as he was baffling the Austrians with an alternating volley of threats and lofty promises about how much they could accomplish together.
So he would fit in with the modern-day politicians.
But even as he was holding his own in German affairs, his zeal abroad nearly cost him his ministry. A rebellion had broken out in Poland, and the Russians were eager to quell it.
Poland. Fortunately, always somehow involved in setting off almost World War.
Already sending in troops, Bismarck immediately dispatched Prussian divisions to the Polish border and sent a note to Russia basically saying, "Hey guys, we can totally help you with that." Soon, protests over this action broke out from the other major European powers, with France, Great Britain, and Austria all condemning Berlin. Many thought that Bismarck would have to resign over this, but the king, the very same one who had exiled him to Russia before, refused his resignation. Soon, Europe's ire turned from Berlin to St. Petersburg, and while the matter would blow over in time, to the Russians, this unification of the European powers against them brought to mind the recent and disastrous Crimean War.
Russia fearing the European countries working together against Russia. things have not changed.
And in doing so, reminded them just why having an ally in Prussia might be valuable. But just as this affair was being put behind him, his great project was again in jeopardy. The Emperor of Austria had invited the Prussian king to a congress of princes to discuss the matter of German unification. Bismarck at once saw that the Austrians had stacked the deck, and any vote at such a conference would go in their favor. But he also knew that he wouldn't be able to convince the king that an invitation from other princes was a trap. So he took a different approach. The king was never the most secure of people, so Bismarck convinced him that the invitation was an insult, and that it should have been sent to him with much more formality.
But she's actually kind of right. If you're inviting someone to a banquet of princes, especially back then, it should have been, nicer.
So the king declined to go. But then, days later, the King of Saxony rode up, bearing another invitation imploring the prince to come. Now he had been formally asked to attend by 30 princes with a king as the message bearer.
Okay, that's impressive. You kind of can't argue this one.
There would be no convincing good old Wilhelm that this was a slight. Instead, in a meeting full of shouting, imploring, and not a little sobbing on both sides, Bismarck convinced the king that he would be giving up the independence of the Prussian army if he agreed to anything at this conference. And so, with Bismarck ripping off the door handle on the way out, once
Probably cheap wood.
again the king declined to attend. With that, the course was set. The initial threats were in check. Now, at last, Bismarck could truly begin his project of iron and blood.
Things are heating up, people. Which is not a shock because Europe, especially back then, was always a powder keg just waiting to go off. But that is all I have for you. Tuesday, we are doing a death battle. I am out of ideas and theories at the moment, or at least I need a video to do better than, 10 views. Trying to grow the channel, not plateau the channel. But until then, I will see you weird people later, and I'm going to walk the Wawa, despite the fact that Mother Nature decided it's a good time to turn off heat. Later.